Hello, I'm Quick Jen, and this is another video on why humor matters in Malazan. I have to start by once again thanking Stephen Erickson for sharing my last video. I'm just so incredibly honored, and it really means a lot. And thanks as well to Isker Jarak for sharing and recommending my videos, as well as to all of you for watching. I am talking about Shurq Elalle today because she is, no heads barred, the best undead pirate in Malazan. When we first meet her, Shurq is already dead or undead, and her sense of humor is very dry with a deadpan delivery, perhaps in part because unpleasant things happen when she laughs. She's initially described as apathetic and lifeless, but resigned to her fate. When Tihal and Bug are drinking their wool tea, she says, "There are times when I regret being dead." This is not one of those times. Her undead state is both a source of humor and character development, often at the same time. And while it seems strange to talk about growth in a character who cannot grow, it's particularly satisfying to watch Shurq go from unkempt, unhappy zombie to a fulfilled, if insatiable, pirate captain. In fact, one of the things that I love about these books is that even the relatively minor characters feel fully fleshed out. Fleshed out. Okay, I will stop now. Shurq is not complicated. We always know exactly what motivates her, but she is a complex character and a study in contrasts. She has no interest in material wealth, yet chooses twice to pursue careers that focus entirely on stealing from others. For Shurq, the saying, "you can't take it with you," is true and should be followed by the sentence, "but that doesn't mean I have to let you keep it either." She finds satisfaction in depriving the living of their material possessions. So when Iron Bars claims that the undead are never petty, my first thought was the image of Shurq in the middle of a heist, taking the time to carve a mustache in a painting of Garen Everett. Shurq is vain, but she's not self-absorbed. At first, every reference to Shurq's physical appearance alludes to the fact that she's dead, right down to her raising a lifeless brow, which left me wondering how that differs from a living brow. But when T-Hall offers her a fortune, she responds that what she wants is to be pretty again. Shurq cares very much about her looks and fashion. Yet at the same time, she takes the mutilation of her body in stride, pressing her hands into broken glass, claiming that dismemberment will only make it easier for her to break in through small spaces, and of course, the scene in which she falls off of a roof and ends up with a metal bar in her forehead. She figures it could have been worse, as in, like, the bar could have been longer, and she does not let it stop her from seducing T-Hall. Her only concern is how she'll cover the hole after the bar is removed, telling T-Hall that bandanas are pathetically out of fashion and she would be mortified to be seen in public with one. Which, I'm gonna geek out a little bit here, but it's a great use of mortify, which obviously means embarrassed here, but the root means death and can also mean to subdue desires of the flesh or to rot and decay. So it's just a great word for Shurq. Speaking of which, Shurq is incredibly self-conscious about the fact that she's dead, but she's also adamant in calling out prejudice and can be an outspoken advocate for the dead. She doesn't want T-Hall to tell Oblala she's dead, and she gets annoyed whenever it's brought up. She's downright pissed off when Dead Smell outs her to the Malazans, but she also doesn't hesitate to call out bigotry against the undead whenever she encounters it. She rescues Harless when she breaks into the Garen's house and helps him achieve his lifelong, deadlong, last time I swear, dream of being scary with sharp fangs and talons. When she meets Hood and the crippled god, she's appalled by the god's lack of accountability to their dead worshippers, and it's hinted that her path ahead may involve fighting for the rights of the dead. And yet, that willingness to stand up for others is contrasted by her lack of interest in emotional connections. Even when she's helping out Kettle, she's constantly reminding her that she is not her mother. She does feel guilty about abandoning the Crimson Guard in Jakaruku, but then consoles herself that Iron Bars was familiar with the place, insofar as he knew its name. After Ruthen Gud tells Shurq she's a cold woman, she thinks to herself, it's always better to sour the ending, to make it easier to get them to leave. Another contrast is Shurq's blunt straightforwardness with her uncanny ability to pick up on nuances and the things people don't say. Shurq does not beat around the bush when it comes to communicating with others. And in just about every scene, she's able to pick up on subtle clues to see things that other people miss. She's the only one who recognizes the usefulness of the Azath ground swallowing bodies. She's the one who realizes the canal is too shallow and too full of bodies. And she also picks up on the fact that Bug is more than he seems. For all of T-Hall's brilliance, she's the one who planned and executed the break-ins at Garen's, the Tolls Repository, and the Treasury, and she knew exactly how to motivate Ablala and the ghosts to provide the help she needed. One of my favorite scenes is when Shurq tells Ablala that Garen's guards don't like him, and he replies that then he doesn't like them either, to which she says, so you say, but I haven't seen any proof. It's a technique that impresses T-Hall so much, he uses it himself in later books. In her first meeting with Tavor, she accurately assesses the situation in Lether and quickly pegs everyone in the room. Tavor gives her a little bit of trouble, but her assessment is more accurate than most. The scene between Shurq and Tavor is great. They actually have a lot in common. Blunt tongues, yet sharp eyes and minds. And Tavor even flirts with her a little bit. Later, with Hood, Shurq's anger and heartbreak at how Tavor is being used is especially satisfying because she is speaking for us. Hood defends himself by saying he watched through the helm's visor as Tavor killed her own sister, but Shurq quickly picks up on the fact that Tavor didn't know who she killed. Literally, nothing gets past this woman. However, while she can be supportive of others, there is one aspect of Shurq that really drove me crazy. Most of Shurq's interactions with women tend to revolve around competition and jealousy. When T-Hall comes to get her from the brothel, she accuses the other women of being jealous cows, and later tells Ruthen that women don't really like each other. Really? By the time I got to the fight between Janeth and Shurq, I was so frustrated I couldn't even appreciate the really great one-liners they were throwing at each other, which made it even more hilarious and wonderful when it turns out that what appeared to be a stereotypical catfight is actually two of the smartest and funniest women in the books working together. Erikson is great at playing into those stereotypes and then turning them on their head. All right, so it's time to talk about the Utulu, but first, an important message. If you are one of my children, you might want to stop watching this video now or risk having one of the more awkward experiences of your young life. Your choice. Okay, so obviously one of Shurq's most defining characteristics is her sexuality. In part, this is because of the Utulu parasite that restores the semblance of vitality to her skin and the ability to feel pleasure, and which must in turn be fed. But Shurq's sex drive is not just the byproduct of the Utulu. When we first meet Shurq, she's sitting outside a brothel window, listening to the moans coming from within. She makes several comments about being unable to give or receive sexual pleasure, and along with being pretty, feeling pleasure again is the only thing she asks for in payment from T. Hall. This is important because without that context, the Utulu and the idea of female sexuality that it represents becomes something unnatural or monstrous. And that's not what's happening here. Shurq's Utulu may be uncontrollable at times, but she never once expresses regret at the benefits or even suggests that the inconvenience isn't worth it. I've heard the theory that the Utulu represents sex addiction, and the idea of addiction as a monster that lives inside and is never satisfied feels apt, but I don't really think it's the point. Now, with Shurq, I'm pretty sure sex is the point. When she first receives her Utulu, she's told that it will invade her entire nervous system, but it must be kept out of her brain. And as Shurq herself says in a later book, that's the whole point of desire. It's mostly brainless. A lot of the humor with Shurq and sex comes from how straightforward it is. There is so much language and so many rituals around seduction and sex, particularly in fiction. So when characters decide to sidestep all of that and get to the point in as few words as possible, it's unexpected and funny. Hitan announcing, "I would ride you," or Ablala saying, "I want to sex you," or Shurq shrugging, "Just roll him over." Shurq tends to be pragmatic about most things, and that is certainly true of her attitude towards sex. At one point, when Ablala says he wants to sex her, Shurq replies, "How sweet, but just so you understand, lots of men sex me, and you can't let that bother you, all right?" Shurq doesn't believe that jealousy and possession, or even love and loyalty, should be confused with sex. In fact, she believes that most of the world's tragedy is found in this one misunderstanding. For Shurq, desire and pleasure should never serve any purpose other than their own. Lately, it can sometimes feel like all public discourse about sex has to be heavy and serious and respectful. And I am glad those conversations are taking place. But there's also something to be said for remembering that sex can be funny and ridiculous and amazing and fun, and that it's okay to just relax and laugh at the zombie pirate sex assassin. Sex assassin, for the record, is a phrase used jokingly in Midnight Tides, and it made me laugh. Neither Shurq nor her Utulu kill anyone in these books, at least not directly. There's a reason I decided to focus on humor on my channel, and it's not just because I wanted to use the word zombie pirate sex assassin in a video. Humor serves many purposes, both in these books and in our lives. When something familiar is presented in an unfamiliar way, or our expectations are subverted, it makes us laugh. But it's also an effective way to expand our perspective on something we think we already know or understand. With Shurq, there are no grand moral statements or corresponding values or judgment. This is humor used to make us think about our attitudes and beliefs in a different way, to question the assumptions and portrayals that are easy to take for granted. In her last scene in the Book of the Fallen, there's a moment when Shurq looks at Hood's path in longing. But in the end, she turns back toward her crew and follows them instead, saying to herself, "Don't be a fool, woman." There are many points in the series where someone offers to end the curse by bringing her back to life or allowing her to die. And every single time she's like, yeah, or I could just stay sexy and awesome forever though. Shurq is anything but a fool. That's it. Thanks for watching and see you next time.